Hi guys. So we are gonna end with the Turkish model of democracy. So we started last lecture and we talked about the history of the emergence or the building of the independent nation state, and we traced the role of the military intervention there, and to what extent it did assume or it has assumed this like proactive role as a guardian, like or proactive guardian role in order to safeguard or to assert the democratic and Ataturk principles, the principles established, the secular and democratic principles and norms established by Kemal Ataturk. So this lecture we are gonna talk more about the AKP and the political Islam in Turkey, and we're gonna touch upon the Kurdish question there. So last lecture we also talked about the emergence of the historical actually roots of political Islam there, and how the National Salvation in the 70s and then the Welfare Party that actually appealed to marginalized constituencies and mobilized underprivileged voters in the 80s by appealing to the to workers and popular classes there in order to mobilize or to attract their more voters. So they did establish branches across the country, and they were kind of committed in order to build wide wide social basis across the country. And the strategy their strategy actually paid off in 1995 elections, because they were kind of committed, activists, and they tried, to build, to follow these kind of grassroots politics in order to attract, voters and supporters. And they got like 21% in 1995 elections in the National Assembly. But again, because of this, hardcore, conservative and Islamic politics, the Turkish, high command again forced Erbakan in order to resign. And it was like kind of they called it kind of soft coup in Turkey. That led to the harsh crackdown on the party, the party members, and then the party was totally outlawed. So the thing is, AKP actually, it was the success of the AKP since 2002 elections till nowadays. It marked it as kind of a turning point in Turkish politics. And it actually established a principle of accepting political Islam or Turkish Islam in the political sphere. And it actually continued, to win elections. The party has continued, to win elections since 2002, despite, the opposition from the military and there was a recent, failed coup attempt in 2016, and a division split with the Gulen movement, that the one of the major supporter of Erdogan and AKP party. So it actually emerged from the same traditions, like this kind of reconciliation between modernism and traditional Islam. And it came from the same ideological line, of the National Salvation of the 70s and the Welfare Party in the 80s and 90s. So in one important point about this kind of emergence of political Islam in Turkey, I hinted at this last lecture. It was kind of part of nationalism or nationalist ideology as well, with kind of Islamic or religious thrust. So in the 80s, actually, the discourse was kind of the proponents of political Islam actually blended, this religious orientation with nationalism, or nationalist ideology, and the appeal to like this glory of the caliphate and the Ottoman Empire. And it was like clear with the like intellectual production and publishing houses actually production that um, refer to like this glory of the Ottoman Empire and the Caliphate and the conspiracy that led to the dissolution, and especially with the reference to the emergence of the international Zionist movement. Um, so that was like the context from which from within the Arbakan, the Welfare Party and Arbakan actually appealed to wide electoral constituencies, and they actually attracted some supporters. Uh, Another the like tracing it back to the coup of 1980 in order to restore stability and order. So the military intervened in order to put an end to the increasing urban violence and economic hardship. So the military actually tried to find an alternative ideological foundation of the for the state, or for the identity of the state, and they found it in this kind of Turkish Islamic synthesis. So they tried in addition to this Kemalist and these kind of Ataturk principles. So in order to relegate the or to put different ideological groups against each other, especially the communists and the socialists that they were considered as like the main source of the urban violence and social unrest at the time. So the military actually intervened in order to enact some educational policies that focused mainly on like religious culture and ethics, and this through the educational curricula in order in primary and secondary schools, in order to find this ideological foundation of the Turkish identity. And actually they managed to forge this kind of national identity by controlling again the educational policies. So the textbooks actually in primary schools actually depicted soldiers as pious defender of the nation. So they actually managed or controlled they had their own managed or controlled version of Islam to be instilled or to be taught in the schools. And this coincided with this kind of the army position above, how the army actually positioned itself above politics. And again it has reproduced these kind of proactive guardian roles in order to restore stability and order, in order to ensure the democratic and secular principles of the states. But this time they tried to search for another ideological foundation by appealing to Islamic traditions and Islamic practices in order to marginalize leftists and communists. And this actually, with the emergence of right-wing, nationalist parties as well, it was like the motherland party that actually won the elections in 1983, and they started to to use the same discourse or the same elements in order to offer some space for them to find some space for them within this ideological frame. So this is so in addition to the textbooks, politicians actually try to show the public how pious they were by practicing some religious rituals in and showing this to the public. So that was I'm trying to bring you back to the context within which the Welfare Party emerged. and then like the AKP, or like from this like historical line of political Islam. Yeah, and here before like we talk in some detail about the AKP, like engineering this kind of educational policies, and it was like like established through constitutional amendment, like Article 24. So it stipulates that religious and moral education and instruction in religion and ethics shall be conducted under state supervision and control. Instruction in religious culture and moral education shall be compulsory in the curricula of primary and secondary schools. So that was actually constitutionally actually approved and ratified, and it was like it offered the state kind of authority in order to manage and control the educational curricula, and to establish this, or to forge this national identity based on Islamic or with this kind of Islamic content. So like the AKP actually, the Justice and Development Party, it came from like it was like a successor of this Islamic this historical Islamic traditions in Turkey. Erdogan actually was one of the co-founders of the party, and like in 2002 it actually won the majority of the parliamentary seats, and it actually assumed power. So the party actually became in control of the political power since 2002. So and the popularity actually it did increase in the subsequent elections. So in 2002 it was like 34% nearly. 2007 46%, 46.5%, and then 2011 48%, and then in the general elections in 2015 it was like between 40 and 49%. So despite this kind of like opposition and growing like secular opposition inside Turkey, and some like division within some of the supporters, and like the party managed, and some other, like as we're gonna see, like corruption allegations. So it was the party managed to maintain kind of its electoral success. So what helped with that, like the personality of Erdogan as well, his like this kind of populist rhetoric and this kind of charismatic style, it helped a lot by sometimes actually surpassing the party machinery or the party as an organization. So it actually this kind of populist discourse or rhetoric appealed to obviously to wide electoral constituencies, and led to like polarization within the Turkish society. So like they did believe like the historical origins as like any other like traditions of these Islamic movements or like political Islam in Turkey. So they believe in like the concept of like a community of believers as like so social conservatism, or like Islam as like a driver for like social interactions and organization of different social and social interactions and social deals. And this is in addition to nationalism as an ideology as well. But the program actually, so after like the banning of the welfare party, so some of the members actually tried to form a new party, and they did actually form a virtue party, and then it happened kind of a division between like moderates and traditionalists, people who sided with Arbakan, and hardliners and innovationists in 2000, and then they did found the AKP party, and then the program of the AKP party actually attracted, some of the like urban masses as well, and some of the liberals, because it focused mainly on like economic development and democratization, program as well. And it was because of this kind of, back then it was like a EU motivated, democratic reform package, in order to meet, some of the demands, needed in order to join the EU, some of the criteria in order to join the EU. So that's why the program actually attracted some liberals as well. So some liberals actually did support the AKP in 2002. And basically the party campaigned on a neoliberal economic platform. So that's why it attracted, some of the business community and business group as well. So in addition to some of the Islamic bourgeoisie, and the previously or the pre-existing, confederations and associations of Turkish business community and industrialists. So actually the program attracted, some of the business community and some of liberals as well, that they did believe, in democratization and democracy and neoliberal economy as well. And of course, like the Islamic bourgeoisie, by approaching or supporting the AKP, they, as we mentioned, in the political economy week, so they managed to get, some favorable treatment and preferential, policies from the AKP that helped them to accumulate wealth and to run their own business and to get considerable market share there. And the ideology, it's socially conservative, and they had like this platform that asserted, or emphasized different principles to make like the conservative and the Islamic ideology compatible with the democratic principles. So they focused on evolutionary rather than revolutionary reforms inside Turkey. Like that was since in 2002. So after a decade, actually, the party actually dominated, the political landscape, and Erdogan himself personalized, the authority, and it actually it has kind of slided into this kind of electoral authoritarianism. It was kind of a retreat from these democratic practices. So the focus on the focus was on these kind of evolutionary reforms rather than revolutionary orientation, and then reconciliation and people's sovereignty. So they have this kind of they had these kind of skills in order to appeal to the wide masses by emphasizing, peoples and their sovereignty as a source of the legitimacy. And then pluralism, political pluralism, and consultation and participation without any kind of imposition of authority, or adopting this top-down approach. And there's kind of rejection of social engineering from above, how to form different classes, or intervening, in social and economic policies. So because of this kind of liberal and economically, they have this kind of neoliberal orientation. So they attracted some of the business community and some Islamic bourgeoisie as well. And as by using or investing in this kind of populist rhetoric, they actually made they focus on division between white Turks and black Turks in a reference to this kind of division and inequality inside the Turkish society, in order to attract, the marginalized groups and popular classes as well. And the AKP actually benefited a lot from the support from Gulen movement. So the movement, it was it's kind of a international religious and social movement. it it has like branches across the world. And the its leader Fathallah Gulen actually he's considered kind of uh, self-exiled, like exiled preacher of and offered kind of a moral authority to the movement. And the movement actually has this Islamic agenda by having a plan to penetrate state institutions, especially having like control over media outlets and like state bureaucratic apparatus and judicial agencies as well, in order to implement their Islamic vision. So and the movement as well, like it has kind of roots, historical roots, in the right wing nationalism and some of the religious writing uh, that actually helped with formulating this Islamic version of nationalism. uh, so the movement actually uh, used its like media outlets and in order to support AKP figures in elections, because like AKP and the Gulen movements, they had like some sort of shared goals. So economically they had this kind of same orientation about integrating Turkey into the international economic system or global market. And they have like the same policy orientation of privatization and attracting or increasing the foreign investment in Turkey in order to benefit the Islamic bourgeoisie groups. So it's about it has like kind of like identity and like share, like they shared the same kind of um, ideological orientation, but they have also some of the, like when it comes to like implementation of certain economic and social policies, uh, they shared, they have like common goals and shared goals as well. um, so like some of the business community that actually associated with the Gulen movements, they enjoyed some of the concessions from the AKP, like favorable contracts or access to credit and some of the assets as well. So this enabled like enabled both of them to grow, like and to develop rapidly, and to actually marginalize the effect of the historical effect of the military by like getting entangled in this kind of democratic vision and neoliberal economic policies, together with like this socially conservative environment. So they shared the same political and economic and social orientations and goals as well. So this actually it's not like perhaps like the military. So realistically, these like the AKP and the Gulen movement, they had like kind of combined power that enabled both of them to replace the military tutelage power. So the military, the like the this kind of guardianship role actually waned over time, and it was like the void was filled by political Islam. And they actually they did like like they established their control over the police apparatus and the judicial branch and other like state institutions. So they kind of penetrated the state institutions in order to implement their plan or vision. um, but actually it after a decade, since like 2009 2010, so after roughly a decade of the electoral victory of the AKP, so the Gulenists actually they had their dominance over like the judicial agency and police and state bureaucratic apparatuses. So like they created kind of parallel state, within like the ranks of the judiciary. um so they like Erdogan actually he became kind of he started, getting angry at this kind of dominance of the Gulenist within state apparatus, and especially when the movement and the leader actually started to criticize his policies. So he was kind of sensitive toward this kind of um, any kind of criticism to his policy. And it started when Erdogan actually tried to break, the Israeli siege in Gaza by sending, like shipping, some of the supplies in solidarity with the peoples in Gaza. So actually, Gulen started to criticize because like the Israeli forces actually left some of the Turkish members that actually they were sent in order to Gaza. Actually, they left them dead. So that's why like the Gulen actually described this as kind of irrational, or started to be vocal and to voice, his opposition to Erdogan. And on another like or another issue that actually brought, this kind of division between the AKP and the Gulen movement, it was like the state, when the state started, kind of indirect talk with the PKK, but with the like the Kurdish party, the PKK. So the Gulen actually described this as like backroom talks, and he actually didn't agree, on the state policy in order to negotiate with the Kurdish militants. And another issue, like the economic corruption and this kind of crony capitalism and cronyism that actually benefited more like the business or Islamic bourgeoisie, that they are associated with the AKP more than like Gulenist business community or business group. So in addition to this split between like the Gulenist and AKP, or basically like, the Erdogan, like one of the Erdogan supporter, he started actually to face, kind of opposition from like some other challenges from opposition and from old supporters as well. So from secular opposition, because of his policies that this is like socially conservative, like and basically this kind of Islamic, lifestyle, like banning, alcohol and um, like the issue of the hijab and these kind of like, lifestyle item, like elements. So this actually started to alienate, some segments of like secular middle class in Turkey, and they started, to express, their opposition and to voice, their opposition to Erdogan policy that actually totally neglected or their own like demands and their own lifestyle. Um for liberals as well, because especially since 2011. So what happened? Actually, they supported the AKP because of its EU, like, oriented, democratic reform package. Um, so like when the opposition started, to express, their demands and grievances in the street, especially like in 2013. So like Erdogan actually brutally cracked down on the protesters. So these kind of harsh policies as well, like alienated, liberal some of the liberal supporters, and the harsh policies against, Kurds as well, and the military operations, that actually and harshly mistreated and brutally actually put down, the Kurdish uprisings and cleared, their their provinces. And after like 2011 as well, after like the uprisings of 2011, so the Erdogan actually, in order to assume kind of regional role, so he started to make like increasing reference to Sunni identity, especially like, and it was like, clear with the like the intervention of Iran in Syria and the civil war in Syria, and then like, the like when like the emergence of political Islam, when Morsi like took power in Egypt, and then Nahda and its coalition in Tunisia. So it was like a moment in order to he started to celebrate, by making, these kind of increasing reference to Sunni identity. So this actually it didn't actually the it was not kind of well received, from their his liberal supporters. And again, like, these kind of corruption about like, bribery for construction or money laundering, these kind of accusations or allegations that actually faced no kind of no one actually pressed, any charges. So like this kind of so they started to grow angry at his policies and his like, way of handling political protest and the Kurdish question in Turkey. And like with the Golanist as well, he tried to purge, the some of the state institutions from Golanist, in order to because he didn't actually tolerate any kind of criticism from like Gulenists, as despite the fact that they were kind of one of the one of the, like, the friends, or not only like supporters, but they had like, this kind of combined power that actually strengthened the AKP position and its grab, or its hold on power since 2002. So he started, to purge, some of the state institution of its support, the movement supporter, or the Galenist as well. And it became even like the process, was intensified after the military at the coup attempt in June 2016, because they were accused of like plotting, or scheming against the Gulenists, scheming against Erdogan. So despite the fact that, this kind of growing like, or increasing, dissatisfaction with his policies, so the AKP actually survived and managed actually to win 2015 elections. And in 2015, Erdogan actually portrayed, the elections as a choice between the party with its platform and its call for new Turkey, and a return to these kind of old traditions and old days of military intervention, and these kind of political instability because of the short-lived coalition government and economic instability. So like he kind of put like electorates between like the like choice between like the party and like old traditions of instability or and military intervention. And yeah, and he won. He actually, the party actually won the elections and managed to get like from 40 to 49%, 49% in the rerun. So after roughly like 8 years, in power, so the AKP actually tried to enhance, the position of the executive, or to have like, to have like control over, the state apparatus, not only the military but the judicial branch as well. And this actually undermined, any kind of checks and balances formula or arrangement inside Turkey. So the constitutional amendment of 2010, the amendments actually were meant to erode, the basis or the the ability of the military and establishment and the judicial branch to challenge the AKP government. So the judicial branch actually served as kind of a check on the power of the government, especially after like the declining power of the military to remove the government. So that was like the kind of potential for from like Erdogan's perspective or AKP people. It was like potential or threatening institution or threatening establishment inside the state to their government. Uh, so the several times actually the constitutional court worked to prevent the AKP from passing any legislation that would undermine the secular foundation or the secular basis of the state. So like the like the judicial branch actually acted against the increasing power of the executive one and the AKP, like most especially especially during the first term. So like after like two terms, the AKP actually recognized the power of the judicial branch, and it tried to undermine the authority or the any kind of independence of the branch. So he directly actually involved in the appointment and the elections and subsequent appointment of the some of the courts, and the amendments actually increased um, his appointment authority or power, and actually the amendments were approved by 58% in a referendum. So according to these amendments, it actually they gave like the president a great authority over the selection and the appointment of the senior prosecutors and judges there. Um, and it enlarged as well the size of the Supreme Board of Judges and prosecutors, and it extended the government oversight over the board or over the judicial branch. So before the amendments, like the judges and the prosecutors of the Supreme Board, they were actually selected by two civilian courts, and these courts actually had this kind of secular traditions or had like this strong secular tendencies. So by changing like the size or the composition of the board, the AKP actually with the authority of the appointment, the AKP like made sure that some of the allies or supporters would join the Supreme Board in order to strengthen the position of the AKP. And it actually increased the size of the constitutional court as well. And like these kind of changes actually curtailed the influence of the secular judges in the high courts in Turkish high courts, generally speaking, and it eroded the ability like of the high courts to block or to support, to overturn the government any government legislations. And the amendments as well like weakened the position or the jurisdiction of the domain of the military courts. So according to one of the amendments, actually like crimes committed by members of the military, like against any the constitutional order, so the wouldn't be, or according to the amendment, to they won't be like tried in military court, because this will fall into the jurisdiction of the civilian court. So this actually offered more kind of civilian or empowered the civilian court over military personnel. So furthermore, he tried to undertake what they called in Turkey like the judicial coup in December 2013. So but the Constitutional Court eventually overturned the bill. You know that it actually undermined the independence of the judiciary. So Erdogan actually tried to transform the structure of the Supreme Board and to tighten, you know, the control of the Minister of Justice over the board in order to erode, you know, any kind of autonomous position of the Supreme Court, and this would allow the executive branch to have control over the Supreme Board, and the Constitutional Court in April actually the ruling actually overturned the bill and proved it kind of and proved it unconstitutional. So the situation by 2015 elections that actually the AKP won, it was like growing kind of growing discontent in society, in highly polarized society, and growing like fears of secular middle classes in Turkey, and growing as well like sensitivity against the criticism of the personality of Erdogan. So it was like a system of strong presidency and kind of weak system of checks and balances. So he like, or the AKP, generally speaking, replaced, you know, the old military tutelage, you know, with kind of dominance and like concentration of power. So the party dominated, you know, the parliament and the executive and the presidency as well. So this led to like growing sense of threat, especially for the part of the secular segments in society, because of these kind of issues regarding the Islamic lifestyle. So with the AKP actually making inroads to the public and private spheres and dominant actually position in public and private spheres, there was the growing, you know, sense of threat in society, and it was culminated in the protest of the Gezi protest in 2013, and it was mainly against, or initially broke out against the urban regional. It was like a project, regeneration project, you know, in a park in Istanbul. Like it was like assault on green spaces, you know, in Istanbul. So that's why like protesters, you know, tried to vocalize, you know, their opposition to the project and this kind of urban planning. And then like it evolved into protests against, you know, his Erdogan's authoritarian measures and then neglection or ignorance of the liberal and secular demands, and this kind of imposition of social conservatism there. And he harshly actually put down the protest or the demonstrations, and this led to more or triggered actually more dissatisfaction and angry inside the Turkish society, and he grew kind of sensitive to criticism, and he even like closed off social media and to preclude any criticism directed to his personality or to his policies. Um, we have like huge number of like journalists that they were sent to prison. So this was like, you know, an indicator of the erosion or the freedom of expression there. And people who actually criticized like Erdogan in or they had kind of a personal opinion or criticized him as a person, he actually sent them to court. So they were tried, you know, because they criticized, you know, the president. Um, so Turkey actually has like poor records, you know, when it comes to human rights, especially freedom of expression and freedom of association, and like with large number of journalists again like got detained or imprisoned because of vocalizing different opinion or insulting Erdogan. Um, so there's kind of a debate about whether or not, you know, how actually to call the regime or the political regime under Erdogan. It's certainly there is still like these kind of electoral they maintained, you know, the AKP actually reached power and used these electoral dynamics in order to have like legitimate, you know, or electoral legitimacy in order to rule or to govern the country, with some like questions regarding how transparent and how fair, especially like electoral local elections were. And these kind of harsh measures against freedom of expression and harsh measures and harsh and authoritarian policies against oppositions. And he alienated as well, like, you know, supporters and old friends as well. So it like some called it electoral authoritarianism, or it's kind of democratic backsliding. So it's still like, you know, some features, some authoritarian, you know, features are there, regardless of the like the label, you know, they would give to the current regime. And one of the like important issue there is like the Kurdish question in Turkey as well. So it has like historical roots as well. So it's not like it didn't emerge, you know, under AKP. It had like its own historical roots in Turkey since the establishment of the new independent state, nation state. So like historically, they had like these kind of uprisings in 1930 and 1938, um, in rejection or in they tried to resist, you know, this kind of forging or imposing um, Turkish national identity and molding, you know, them in one Turkish and ethnic identity. And these kind of uprisings were ruthlessly crushed actually by the Turkish government at the time, and led to deportation of many or large numbers of Kurdish people from to the western provinces. So from like, you know, their from their like southeastern parts to western parts. Um, so as I mentioned, it like last lecture we talked about, you know, this kind of language. It was a tool, you know, of like of Ataturk, you know, to establish this Turkish national identity. So like they didn't accept any other like, you know, cultural any form of cultural pluralism or linguistic pluralism. So it was kind of assimilation of different, you know, the Kurdish language into the Turkish one. Um, and the state didn't even like, you know, refer, you know, to them as Kurds, but the frame was like mountain Turks as well. So so it was kind of a denial, official denial of any distinctive identity of the Kurds. Um, and ever since, the Kurdish areas have been like placed under this state of emergency and the presence of military forces in order to crack down or to put down any potential uprisings or any potential challenges there. And they had like this kind of geographical concentration in southeast eastern parts, and because of like sharing the same language and like this kind of geographical concentration, it led to the growing sense of communal identity as a distinct communal identity there, um, from the Turkish one. So the leader of the Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK in 1978, Oglan, he actually so he had this kind of intellectual or ideological foundation of the movement. He basically aimed at establishing, or had this kind of separatist goal to establish a Kurdish state through a communist revolution. So he had this kind of revolutionary thought in order to establish a different state. And the party and the leader, they were committed, to using violent tools and actions against Turkish military in their areas. And actually, they didn't recognize or they didn't accept any legitimate authority of the Turkish military, and they called them fascist agents and local reactionaries. So the PKK activities in 19 it actually it was created in 1978, and like a year after, so they tried, to use, violence in order to establish or to meet, their goals, and they caused damage, and they committed violence against, the existence or the military individuals in their areas, and this pushed, the military to have operations in their areas, and actually to recruit, some of the locals in order to eliminate, the rebellion there. And this actually led to, or forced Öcalan to flee to Syria and Lebanon with his comrades. And they actually between 1980 and 1984, so the leaders in Syria and Lebanon, so they tried to reestablish or to restructure the party, the organizational structure of the party, and they adopted this brutal and violent tactics against splinters inside the party, including, execution and torture there. So during that period, they managed to reestablish the party and actually strengthen the organization, the structure of the party, and to launch kind of guerrilla attacks from northern Iraq and Syria. But the party during that period, it faced like financial difficulties, so they needed to secure kind of funding in order to sustain their military operations. So when they didn't secure funding, so they resorted to like terrorist and robbery attacks on drug trafficking, other kind of illegal activities in order to secure funding. So they received kind of funds from from the Soviet Union at the time, and Syria and Iran as well. And Syria supported like like Kurdish, rebels in order to pressure Turkey, because they had like these disputes over water resources from the Euphrates River. So they got some support from some countries, so that's why they sustained, their rebellion and violent attacks and brutal tactics against like the Turkish military authority, and as we're gonna see, against their Kurdish community as well, because one of the Öcalan's problem as well, he had to overcome as well this kind of traditional structure, or the traditional organization of the Kurdish community in their provinces. So they were kind of conservative, and they had their loyalty to like they have kind of tribal and traditional loyalties. So the party, and they like launched attacks, on some of the Kurdish population in their areas, and the state, or the Turkish state as well, recruited what they called the village guard system. So the regime actually recruited some of the Kurdish militants in order to, and equip them in order to undermine, the power bases of the PKK. In 1985, it was like the idea was introduced in the mid 80s, in order to use these civilian militias, in order to from Kurdish tribes, in order to mobilize them against Öcalan and his comrades. And then they started to organize themselves into different parties, because they started to some of their supporters. So they started to form like a political party against the brutality of the existing or the Turkish state, and the PKK as well. So and Human Rights Watch several times actually made this reference, in the early 80s, to the brutality of the Turkish authority, and this kind of brutal crackdown and brutal measures against rebels, the Kurdish rebels there, and this kind of mistreatment, and on the pretext of anti-terror law. So in addition to like the state actually forced eviction and demolished actually the houses and the homes of several like Kurdish population in their provinces in southeastern parts of the country. But actually, it was not only against these kind of measures. They were not only against the rebels, but it actually extended, these brutal measures in order to crack down on the village guard system, because or some of the Kurdish people that actually refused, or they defected from the village guard system. And as well, like to those who offered any kind of support and supply or shelter to the fighters, the PKK fighters. So more, this actually led to more, or triggered actually more like violence, and offered more like legitimate kind of recruiting grounds for the PKK fighters to recruit more supporters. And they started to organize themselves into political parties in order to pressure, and some actually were emerged with the Islamic color or Islamic orientation as Al Huda, that actually emphasized the Kurdish identity and Kurdish ethnicity with like Turkish Islamic tradition. and they started, to call for their educational and linguistic rights. So one of the main supporters to the Kurdish cause, or the Kurdish fighters in Turkey, was Syria. And in 1991, it announced, actually, Syria actually refused, or it had an agreement with the Turkish government, that it Adana Protocol. So according to this, Syria actually committed itself to not supporting, the PKK fighters, or and expelling Öcalan from Syria, and this actually led to his capture and his arrest in 1 year after, in 1999, and this led to like a ceasefire between the fighters, the Kurdish fighters, and the Turkish government. But like they repeatedly announced, this ceasefire agreement, but it didn't actually, in reality, it didn't, or on the ground, it didn't actually end the war. The war actually ended several months later, or it actually broke out after, the agreement of the ceasefire. But it was like the context during that period was like Öcalan actually was sentenced to death in 1999, but it was not like implemented, the penalty, because Turkey actually, in order to meet again, like, with its negotiation, in order to meet the entry criterion, one of the entry criterion was like a constitutional, to introduce this kind of constitutional reform package. One of this removing or like including kind of restrictions, or restrictions on the death penalty. So the package, or the reform package in 2001, or this kind of reform package in 2001, 2002, saved the Öcalan life, and instead, actually, he was commuted to life imprisonment. And he continued actually to offer guidance, or to offer this moral authority and moral leadership to the party, that actually offered guidance and orders several times by like taking like military action, or to announce ceasefire. So it was like after September 11, the international context actually had like the Turkish government to actually to go even further with the anti-terror law, but the party managed actually to regroup itself under Öcalan, acting council. So he started the council, and the party actually didn't vanish, and the council offered more guidance and orders in order to proceed with their military actions against the Turkish government. And they resumed actually their activities in 2004, and it took like, it's an action from the PKK fighters, and counter actions from or violent actions from the military and from the Turkish government, and it was like, never ending, cycle of violence. And the state actually had to implement this large scale military operation in northern Iraq in October 2007, and that was like in order to attack, the PKK bases there, and it continued to detain like the Kurdish protesters, and to and many not only like protesters and fighters, but actually like political opponents and opposition that they were affiliated with Kurdish political parties. So one or another factor that helped actually the Kurdish fighters to to continue with their like violent and military and direct actions against the Turkish government. It was the electoral performance of the Kurdish parties. So different Kurdish parties started to emerge or to to establish themselves. And although they didn't in 1999 and 2002 until 2007, so throughout a decade, actually they didn't manage to surpass this 10% electoral threshold. But actually by engaging and playing from within by the same rules of the game, this signified or increasing influence and support of the Kurdish parties in the southeastern region that undermined actually the supporters or the electoral base of the AKP. And it gained like these Kurdish parties, they gained and they kept capitalizing on their electoral momentum. And it was until 2007 that one party actually exceeded the 10% electoral threshold and managed to secure from I think 20 or 21 deputies that entered, and they had seats inside the national in the parliament. So this actually enabled or offered another push for the Kurdish cause or the Kurdish question, and became it motivated different Kurdish parties to grasp at the electoral victory or these kind of electoral momentum in order to offer more initiative in order to enforce or to pressure the authority or the state in order to acknowledge the Kurdish linguistic and cultural rights. So in 2010, in 2009, Erdogan actually framed the issue as a democracy problem. So it's not only about the Kurdish a Kurdish problem, but it has this kind of linguistic and cultural dimensions. So they started to bring it back into, or to put it on the political agenda by offering more initiatives. The Kurdish parties actually offered more initiatives within the same framework, democratic autonomy or democratic problem. So they actually used the same official frame in order to push for further reforms. And in 2005, the state officially started recognizing this kind of cultural and linguistic problem or rights of the Kurdish people. And in between 2013 and 2015, the state actually had a dialogue or engaged in a dialogue with the PKK and in what they called, or the state called, the solution process. So they reached an agreement, and they drafted a protocol for with terms of reference for further negotiation in 2010. But the Erdogan actually was reluctant to sign the protocol, or to turn these negotiations or talks into official framework for direct talks or negotiations. It was until 2012, 2013, when he was forced actually, or obliged, to acknowledge or to admit these talks with the Kurdish fighters. The leader of the Kurdish fighter, Öcalan, he actually admitted this in a TV interview, that the state actually, the talks actually were happening between the government and the jailed Kurdish leader to convince the PKK to lay down its arms. So what actually gave a push for this, it was the conflict and the civil war in Syria in the beginning. So the Turkish government in March 2013 like before ISIS. The state, the Turkish government actually in March 2013 formed what they called like Wiseman committee. According like the committee actually was in charge of discussing, you know, the terms of the peace process, and to have more open and public talks with the Kurdish leaders. And in September 2013, Erdogan announced, you know, this like new democratic package. So the basically it was like in return for like the Kurdish fighters, they had to lay down arms and to announce ceasefire, but at the same time the state offered, you know, this like reform or democratic package. So the democratic package was centered on um, in order to solve, you know, the Kurdish issue or the Kurdish problem. So it offered more like possible relaxation of the electoral threshold, the 10%, in order to allow the Kurdish parties to enter the parliament as members of parties, not as independents. Because like in order to get around the 10% threshold, so like Kurdish candidates would run as independent, and the state offered like more relaxation on the language to be like taught in private schools, and they offered Kurdish names for villages as well. These kind of symbolic and cultural, offering, you know, more concessions for cultural and symbolic rights, and to release, you know, some of the prisoners and to allow for some freedom of expression, some relaxation of political restrictions. But actually, these deemed to be like, you know, void, because even like the admission or the recognition of Kurdish language, it was not allowed, you know, to be taught in primary schools. It was only after, like, you know, what they called, after, you know, passing through this Turkification process after primary school. So they would get exposed, or they were allowed to learn the Kurdish language. And having like a rubber stamp parliament for like the government policies, it didn't actually help with bringing about with actually introducing significant political opening measures, or lifting more of the political restrictions. And it didn't offer by this actually deemed to be null if the anti-terror law remained in place, and actually the state didn't make any changes to the anti-terror law. And so that was like effectively this kind of reform or democratic package was not like, you know, like realistically it was difficult to bring about, you know, significant changes in the Kurdish or significant solution to the Kurdish question. So what added to this is the regional context and the civil war and the civil war in Syria, and the establishment of the Islamic State, or the ISIS, after like expanding its territorial domain in 2014 and 2015. So it realistically broke off, you know, this kind of peace process, because the turning point came with what happened in the Syrian border city Kobani. So ISIS actually led siege to Kobani, and the Turkish government actually it took no action at all in order to save its traditional enemy, like the Kurdish fighter. And the PKK fighters actually called upon the state, the Turkish state, in order to intervene and to protect, you know, the Kurdish people. But obviously this complicated, you know, the dynamics inside Turkey, because like Bashar al-Assad and ISIS and the Kurdish party, the Democratic Kurdish Party in Syria, these kind of triangle offered like a complicated, the calculations of the AKP party, and it added like more complexity to the peace process inside, or the domestic dynamics inside Turkey. So that like realistically, like this led to like kind of dislodging the peace process, and like triggered actually more harsh measures on the part of the regime. Erdogan actually, so in addition to his like harsh and brutal authoritarian measures and restrictions on other oppositions and secular and Golanist and liberal oppositions, he actually threatened to liquidate, the PKK militants, and to remove, and actually he took steps by removing parliamentary immunity of of a few Kurdish members in order to allow, to allow for their prosecution on terror related charges. So he actually this not only like putting an end to like potential peace process, but also like offered more opportunity or chance for AKP to crack down on the Kurds as well, in the process of like cracking down and crushing political opposition. And of course, like in October 2019, after like the withdrawal of the military troops, it offered more opportunity for AKP party and Erdogan to have a deal with the with Bashar al-Assad's regime, in order to establish this buffer zone, and to further like clamp down on Kurds there. So that's all for Turkey. So I'm gonna post some the bonus question and some instructions for the final on Blackboard by tomorrow. And if you have any questions, so please get in touch with me. And good luck with your final. Bye.